Hi, Karen Curris-Hubbard here, Coordinator of Library Services, and I'm going to talk a little bit about evaluating a resource. I've given you a criteria for doing that evaluation, which includes taking a look at who the author is, what the publication they're writing for, if that publication is supported by an organization and who that organization is, what is the scope of the article, what is the criteria for currency, how recent was the article published, and whether or not that article would fit into your needs. So if you were writing a paper comparing, let's say, the opinions of Christopher Columbus in classical scholarship, and how he was viewed in the 1800s and 1900s, and compared to how he has been viewed since 1992, where you've had kind of a reevaluation of the role of Columbus, especially towards indigenous people. This might be a fine article. It does take a conservative point of view, and I'm going to show you how I've discovered that. There's nothing wrong with that. Again, you want some tension in your paper. You want to be able to show a pro and con, and if that is what you're doing on this assignment, then this is a fine article. But let me tell you how I've come to that conclusion and why I've discovered it is from a more conservative point of view. First thing I looked for is the author, well, the title, Remembering Columbus Blinded by Politics. I did narrow this article down. I originally had like 41,000 or something, and how I narrowed it down, actually you can't see it here, but I narrowed it down by date. So I wanted something that was current, and it's 2019, so it takes care of the currency part. I wanted something that was scholarly and that was peer-reviewed. And so this is a peer-reviewed scholarly journal. So that is right off the bat. It is in EBSCO. It's in a number of other databases. So the first thing I would look at is the author. Who is this guy, Robert Carla? And when I do that, I discover, at least in EBSCO, he has published a number of works, and most of them seem to be for either academic questions, that journal, or for Society, which is another scholarly journal. His areas of expertise seem to be religion and Islam. I don't see an awful lot here about Title IX. I guess I don't know how much of expertise he has in that, but he's written a number of articles about Title IX. So, okay, so I can establish that he is a scholarly author of some sort. When I scroll down and I look, I see author affiliation, King's College, New York. So if I go ahead and do a search of him, and I went ahead and did a search, and actually let me show you the first thing I found about him. I found that Robert Carla, he's a professor at King's College, and when I click on that, looks like a jolly guy. His research interest includes human rights theory, world religions, urban ministry in New York City. Okay, interesting. So it tells me he's written for the Wall Street Journal, Newsday, Religion Unplugged, The Federalist. So I see some conservative publications in here, for sure. But, there is, again, nothing wrong with that. I mean, I'm not looking at any problems with a political point of view or a conservative point of view. I also, if I go ahead and click on his, I think it was his Zoom, I did do a search to see if he's written anything on Christopher Columbus, and I did find one article, which I'll go to right here. I found it in here, right here, let me go right over there. And I do find that he's written for the American Interest, which is a more conservative kind of publication. He wrote a very brief article talking about the holiday of Columbus Day, and at times a villain to both nativists and progressive, Columbus and his legacy will continue to elude us. And so it's not a bad article. It's a general kind of, actually it's like a light version of the one we were looking at in EBSCO. And he talks about a little bit about the history, again, from the 1830s when Washington Irving wrote the history, the life and the voyages of Columbus. And he talks a little bit about the beginning of the 19th century. Italian Americans adopted Columbus as an immigrant hero, and how Knights of Columbus was founded to promote immigrant and Catholic interests, and they were named Columbus, after Christopher Columbus. And so it goes on, and then it talks about what happened. I think where is it over here? 1992, there was a change. There was a realignment of how Columbus was viewed in terms of indigenous people. And that was the beginning of what we're seeing now, kind of a revolution in reevaluating the role of Columbus in our history. Okay, so I've pretty much established now that it is a conservative author. I'm curious about this publication, though. So if I go, I did a search of academic questions. I was curious, what publication is this? Okay, so it comes from Springer, which is a fine publisher. They publish a lot of different journals and academic questions, which copies of academic questions going back to the 1980s is in EBSCO. So EBSCO has deemed that this particular journal is fine. And that's fine. When I read the description, it tells me Academic Questions is the official journal of the National Association of Scholars, takes advantage of the best scholarly analysis to explore the vices and virtues, as well as the virtues of the contemporary university. A journal dedicated to strengthening the integrity of scholarship and teaching. Well, nothing wrong with that. But I am curious about what this National Association of Scholars, for which the Academic Questions Journal is the official publication. So I did do a search of the National Association of Scholars because I was curious. Who are they? We've already established that the author is conservative. So what is the organization? Well, they actually have a page, which is very up to date. They are definitely on top of the news. And I can see that they have some issues with cancel culture, which is interesting. They talk about the DOJ probe on racism at Yale. But when I look in general, I do find a conservative bent in this particular organization. And so I am more curious about them. And so when I look a little deeper, Wikipedia is not the worst. It really isn't. And if I look at a general statement of theirs, it comes right off the top of Wikipedia. It's telling me right off the bat that this organization is politically conservative, as I thought, with a particular interest in education. It opposes perceived political correctness on campuses, college campuses, and supports a return to mid-20th century curricular and scholarship norms and an increase in conservative representation among faculty. And a little farther down, there's something called SourceWatch, which looks at organizations and kind of for better or for worse, kind of kind of grades them on what they are or defines them in some way. And this particular organization does say that the National Association of Scholars opposes multiculturalism and affirmative action, and seeks to counter what it considers a liberal bias in academia. So that seems kind of apparent so far. Now, again, I said that this is an article that you can use. Again, it is scholarly. It follows that. It is up to date. The author is a professor at a university. Looks like his background is fine. The journal in question has been part of the EBSCO family of journals, since the 1980s. But the viewpoint is conservative, and that's important to know because you don't want to blindly accept what is in an article and consider it your own without thinking about it, at least. This would be a fine article to use if you were doing a pro and con, how Columbus has come to be viewed, perhaps including in contrast to this article some more recent 2020. Of course, again, it's going to be hard to find a journal from that time, but perhaps you can find sometimes scholarly authors will publish in ResearchGate or on their websites opinion pieces, or perhaps you will find something by a scholarly author that gives you the other side, which is how Columbus may have impacted the lives of indigenous people and how that's being viewed since 1992 today. So this would be good in a pro and con piece, a contrast piece. You might want to take a look at even some of the footnotes. He does include both. It's mostly conservative, but there are some more liberal resources that he used. So this could work as an article in your paper. So I hope that helps a little bit in terms of using the criteria, again, looking at the author. We'll add one last thing, and we're going to talk a little bit about this. Who is an authority and what is privilege? So this would be the place of privilege in the sense that this is an author that comes from a very perhaps white-based viewpoint of academia, because if he's coming from an organization that wants to go back to the mid 20th century, so that would be like the 1950s. It's a very different type of viewpoint than someone that perhaps is an indigenous person and a professor writing about this from the point of view of minoritized people. So it is, again, a place of privilege. I looked quickly at his background. You know, he's got the right pedigree, but by virtue of that, it is, again, from the conservative kind of older viewpoint of this particular topic matter. Okay, thanks so much. I hope this is useful to you.